Good morning, guys. So we've got a new tab called Long and Short Vol Delta. So Vol stands for volume, and Delta is the change it across time. And we're looking at volumes rather than positions because positioning can give us some false reading. It can give us some like false positives. In so much as that someone could have, let's call him Mr. A. Mr. A could have a position in the Euro USD, and his position could be 0.01, which is like peanuts. And Mr. B could come in and have a position on the Euro USD, and he could have 100 lots. But they're both counted as a position. So we don't want to be looking at their positioning, we want to be looking at their volumes. Okay, and obviously if they're very strongly convinced on a direction in volumes, then we should see price performance reflect that, and they should get punished. With about 80% of the time, they should get punished. We do know that 20% of retail traders are profitable. We saw this happen yesterday on the Euro USD. We had a reduction. They added short on the Euro USD as we fell, and then they took profit. So we saw a reduction of about 18%, and so they definitely took profit on that move, and so they were quite savvy. They took quite a lot of money, profit, and they walked away. So we do know that there are profitable traders in the equation. They're not all terrible traders. There are some really, really good traders out there, and they really nailed that move yesterday, and they made lots of good profits. So, for example, of them being quite savvy and the herd winning in that small minority is AJ currently. So what happened is that at the start of the week, we went from 136, they bumped up their shorts to 167, and then they increased shorts further, and price is falling. So they're getting paid. So we have to remember, this isn't a foolproof system. Not everything is going to have 100% reliability. It should have about 70 to 80% reliability. Ideally more, okay? But we do know that sometimes they get paid, and this is a prime example of them getting paid. Now, because that would be slightly strange, we could see a reversal. But currently, for me, I would avoid it because we've got loss. That tells us that they're getting paid. So currently, you'd want to be careful. But when it's a win, we should be okay. So that's an example of them getting paid. EG is a good example of them getting punished. So let's have a look at EG. 2031, they increased shorts, and then they increased further. So if they're adding short, we should see price go higher, and we are. Do note the amount of wins are greater than the losses, so that tells us that we're on the right track. Trading sentiment is the right approach because we've got more wins than losses. So that's important to note. You just might be unlucky if you trade something. You just might be in that 20% where the herd are profiting. And that's just one of those things. You've just got to be careful. But 80% of the time, they should be at a loss. And we can see that wins are definitely overwhelming the losses. So use case scenarios that you want the colours to match. So e.g., yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's okay. Win, win, win. How are we looking on the long side? Yep, they're getting punished. Win, win, win. So EGs should be okay, right? And also I've done a graphic here. EGs. So they've added shorts. EG. They've reduced their longs. See. So if they reduce longs, it's bullish. So that's a key thing. So you might just have to sort of like redo, just go over it a few times in your head. If they increase longs, it's bearish. If they reduce longs, it's bullish. If they increase shorts, it's bullish. Reducing shorts is bearish. So if you are in a rush and you don't want to be looking at blocks of data, which is fine, there is a graphic down here, and that does tell us what the herd are most aggressively positioned on in their volumes. So they're very short of Aussie CAD right now. So that would be a buy. And they're quite short on CJ, EJ, and pound Swiss. So that's a sell. Pound Swiss. So that's interesting. So how are we looking for pound Swiss? Blocks of red. Yeah, that's fine. That's a win. And yeah, blocks of red. So they're getting punished. So what you want to do, make sure that they're getting punished. Make sure they're getting punished. If they are on both sides, that's great. If we've got a bit of a mismatch, be careful. And I've done a video on the dynamics of them adding or reducing to their shorts or adding or reducing to their longs. It's just basically just going over this, which what I'll do is I'll include like a link to this video. And basically the easy thing to understand is if they go short, we should be a buy. If they go long, we should be a sell. But we have to remember they can get paid, as we see on AJ. What else are they getting paid on? NJ as well. New Zealand dollar yen. They start 95 lots. They reduced, but then they added short. And then adding short today has been quite profitable for them. Okay, so be careful if you've got a loss, because that tells us that they're getting paid. A win-win tells us that they're getting punished. And so, like I say, if you're in a rush, that should help. And also the pie chart should also help as well, which is basically just tells us their conviction on their sentiment, and they're quite aggressively bearish on Aussie CAD, and also looks like Euro CAD as well. So that's quite new. That's of note. So yeah, CJ could be good for potentially as shorts, EJ, and pound Swiss as well. We have to remember though, with pound Swiss, I think we could be hitting its ADR, which is the average daily range. So we can check whether or not we're getting to the ADR, because we don't really want to be trading it when it's gone extreme on the day. We come to pound Swiss, click that link, and that should tell us some more information once it loads. ADR 73 pips, so quite bearish. Oh, the bears are getting paid. That's of note. So what we should be a little bit aware of is that normally is that these guys are at a loss. Now the retail heard the bears, they're making money, just making money. Got very poor score, extremely bearish. So its ADR is 73 pips. So we probably would be getting close to that now. Well, so we're quite heavy. So that's, whether or not we want to enter now, it might be too late. It might be good. You've got to be a bit careful. Return home. And we also can look at something else. Another use case scenario is that potentially you could maybe think, well, maybe I might be looking at CAD yen, because, we can see we could be a sell. It's taken up a big chunk of that wedge. A use case scenario for CAD yen would be, we know that it's a sell here on the longs, but we're just waiting for that to go red, and so we can click on CAD yen and get some information, and that loaded nice and quick. So how are we looking? We're quite bearish. Got lots of red. Now the thing of note with the CAD yen, the live price 108.42. Look at the monthly pivot 108.47. So we've got monthly pivot now as a resistance. Monthly pivot's a very, very, very strong level, and we're also below the weekly pivot as well. So in case you see MP, WP, DP, that means monthly pivot, weekly pivot, daily pivot. We're below all three. So we're trending lower, technically trending lower. The herd along, and also technically quite bearish. And then that agrees with what we're seeing on the delta as well. So CAD yen could be good. And we've got that monthly pivot as a resistance. So you could use these monthly pivots as your stop loss. If you look at an entry at 108.43 with a stop loss at 108.47, or say 108.51, that's a very tight stop loss, and so you could get a good risk to reward. Maybe a little bit of a a little bit of heads up here is that we're getting a little bit of a discrepancy. So they've added short and they've added long. So that's not really ideal. And so that's why we probably might want to wait for that just to confirm. Once that goes red, then it's going to look pretty bad for CAD and so therefore that could be a sell. I've also talked about where your stop loss could be as well. So it's quite cool. You've got shortcuts here. What else do I need to talk about? There is also something of note is the change, the weight of the weekly against its daily. See, it's very much overwhelming in its strength compared to the daily. So, you know, on the weekly, it's very much a buy. On the daily, it's been a little bit naughty. And, but basically, we're seeing like an overwhelming weight here. So, you know, if the daily was stronger than the weekly, then that'll be a bit of an issue. But you can see that as definitely a strong, that's a stronger level than the daily. So you could look for longs based on the weekly. It will depend on your style of trading because if you're an intraday trader, you could probably just be looking at daily. But if you're like looking at swings, then you can look for weekly. Or if you're like in a combination of the two, then you can use both. But really, we should be okay just from the sheer fact of the weekly. A 222% increase of short volume. So I'm not sure why they're going so YOLO on that particular currency pair, but they are, and we will never know why they do certain things. They just do it as a herd, as a crowd, and that's it for that. So just get the colours to match. If they mismatch, be careful, and remember if we get a colour block, they need to agree on this side as well, ideally. Okay, and remember that they also get paid about 20% of the time, and we can see the win rate here. So we should be around about 70%, and a little bit. It's currently favouring the herd slightly. We've got a 50-50 hit rate on the longs, but on their sell, on their shorts, we're doing okay. So it might be to do with the CPI, but currently 50-50 isn't that great. It needs to be higher up. So we could be seeing a little bit of fake stuff going on right now. Normally, about 80% of the time, they should be losing. So our win rate should be higher. It should be around about 70 to 80%, which something around there would be normal. And that's it. So hopefully it helps. If you're in a rush, check these graphics. If you have got a bit of time, check for blocks of colour. And remember that they can get paid. So if it's a loss, you know, just step away. But if it's a win, then it could be good. So AN could be good because we haven't really moved very far on its ADR. It's hardly moved at all. Let's click AN and see what that says. Once it loads, of course. Bullish. Yeah, it's looking quite good. We've got lots of greens. We've got the monthly pivot, 110.60. Yeah. And we're fairly pips above the monthly pivot, so you could theoretically look for a long with a stop just below the MP. It's a fairly pip stop, but if you get a 60 pip profit, that's a 2R trade. It's a good risk to reward. And so that's an ideal scenario, is that we have this divergence here. That would be a good confirmation. What we want to see is a divergence. We don't want to see a convergence, which I might be able to show you. Yeah, AJ could be a good one with the convergence, but I don't know what to see. No, that's fine. Maybe CAD. So that's something that we'd probably want to be careful of, because what we should see is the lines spreading apart, not going in the same direction. So CAD could be a bit tricky, and don't forget we've got a return home button there, and that takes us back. And that's it. So hopefully it helps. Remember, it's not completely foolproof. One, that the herd can get paid 20% of the time, sometimes more. Sometimes they can get paid 40% of the time. So 60-40 ratio. And we have to remember like the fundamentals as well, because if the S&P and the Nasdaq, Dow, if they are plummeting for whatever reason and the VIX is spiking like crazy and the volatility is surging, that's going to impact FX very strongly. So while this is all well and good, it doesn't take into account fundamentals. So you probably do want to check your risk calc. And so we are strong. So we know that risky assets should do okay. So like Aussie should be okay. The dollar probably shouldn't be performing well, because if we're in euphoria, there's no demand for safe havens. And we can see the VIX got crushed. The VIX was above 20 and it got crushed, which is pretty typical. And so that's it. So hopefully it's a good video. Any questions, let me know. I won't mind at all. And don't forget, you've got shortcuts here. And on those shortcuts are your levels for stop loss and take profit. So that's it. So hopefully it helps. And don't forget, we've got a dynamic of the sellers. They increase or decrease. And we've got the dynamic of the longs. They increase or they decrease. And if they agree on both sides of the equation, then that's good. So blocks of green here, winners blocks of green, that's great. Blocks of red, that's great. As we can see on the pound Swiss and also pound CAD should be a little bit more negative as well. So lots and lots of trade setups. Just remember to be careful. Use the correct sizes, perhaps use smaller sizes than you normally would, until you get an idea and a feel of the system. And that's it. So any questions, let me know. Don't forget, you can join us anytime. If you want to get sheet access, you need to select the premium tier at patreon.com/QuasiDB. And I'll speak to you guys soon.